Better go in on some of these clowns. You know, when your favorite fighter loses, you try to find every excuse in the book. We see it with Mike Tyson for why the fighter lost. That's why I say losers make excuses. Winners win. In the case of Canelo, I've heard the following narratives. Bevo was too big for him. As you can see from the profile pic, if you read it, Dimitri Bivol says that he and Canelo are about the same size. And they really are. Canelo came in somewhere between 175 and 180 pounds. Bivol was 183 pounds on the night. He wasn't much bigger than Canelo. He was longer. He was taller. But not significantly. Bivol's not even a big light heavyweight. Bivol said he might be able to go down to 168. He don't want to say it too fast, but he might be able to go down to 168 and get Canelo's titles. My point being, people keep on making excuses for the fighters they like. And they're not trying to be objective. They're not trying to be honest. Okay? I was just watching Dante's Boxing Nation. Shout out to Dante's Boxing Nation. And he raises a very good point. You know, when Deontay Wilder lost the third fight, and and Barack were interviewing one of his, I think his brother, or a trainer, or one of them. Ak just blew up on his trainer because, or one of his team, blew up on his team saying no excuses, just accept the defeat, blah blah blah. So Canelo Alvarez, he can make excuses, and his fans can make excuses for him, and I include Ness from the Boxing Voice. They can make excuses about him. Who was the other person? Oh yeah, somebody. They was trying to say something. I don't know who it was. And I just signed out from their channel when they made that statement. Who was it? I'm trying to remember who it was. I can't even remember the channel, so I really shouldn't. But, you know, I was listening to them making excuses about Canelo. These are the excuses that they're coming up with. And it's just so stupid. One, why are you bringing up Mayweather? You know, why are you bringing up Mayweather? He lost to Mayweather. Well, because, one, the way how Mayweather whitewashed him is the same way how Bivol whitewashed him. The way how Mayweather used his feet and his footwork is the same way Bivol used his feet and his footwork. The way how Mayweather established range and where he wanted to fight the fight and how he dictated the terms of the fight is the same way Bivol did it. Because Bivol's a master boxer, as Mayweather's a master boxer. So that's why we're talking about it. When Canelo met somebody with skills, it was this fight. People making it about weight. They're making it about Canelo taking risks, and he's taking more risks than Mayweather because he lost to Bivol. You know, he's taking risks that nobody in boxing today is doing. That's bullshit as well, because Demetrius Andrade, he's going up his third division. His third division. Canelo's only a 4-division champion. He's going up his third division to test himself as well. All right? There are many fighters in boxing testing themselves. Naoya Inoue, Alexander Usyk, but they're winning. They're winning. Usyk just challenged Anthony Joshua. What are you talking about? They're not fighters in boxing testing themselves. Okay? We got Jamal Charlo. He went up to middleweight. Okay, but boxers all test themselves. It's just that some boxers, they don't have that leeway that Canelo has in boxing. So let's stop with that bullshit. Okay, Mayweather's a 5-divisional champion. Canelo's a 4-divisional champion. How dare you open your damn mouth and say that Canelo is testing himself more than Mayweather is testing himself? Are you stupid? Are you stupid? Right? Mayweather came up from super featherweight. He was a 130-pounder. Fought all the way up to 154. What are you talking about? There's these narratives. Y'all come with these stupid-ass narratives. And then nobody else in boxing is testing themselves. Terrence Crawford is a 3-divisional champion. Right now he is at welterweight. Not right now. He's going to have a fight with the best welterweight in the welterweight division after trying for many years to get that fight. He's always been testing himself. Dimitri Bivol wanted Canelo. He wanted to fight Canelo. Yeah, Canelo's supposedly a smaller guy because he's coming up in weight. But Bivol offered to face Canelo at 168. He tested himself. What are you talking about? Fighters don't test themselves. I never got that. They're taking risks. They're testing themselves. You're not taking risks and testing yourself just by going up in weight. Okay? But just in case that's what you're using as your bar to test yourself, well, there's Naoya Inoue. There's Terrence Crawford. This is why we have pound for pound lists. Now, I heard, not Ness on the Boxing Boys, but some other guy in the Boxing Boys talking about how if he's got to do his pound for pound list, because it's a mythical list where we don't know how a guy would match up with another guy, we really look at resume. That's bullshit again. Y'all need to say the truth, and a lot of y'all don't talk the truth. You're limiting a toe-to-toe, which would be the eye test. You're limiting a toe-to-toe because it's not convenient for your fucking narrative. Okay? Sorry about the F-bomb. It's not convenient for your narrative. I hate dishonest people. So, your narrative is, oh, well, it's mythical, so we can't have everybody in the same weight class. Because Tyson Fury said, if I was if I effing grew wings on my back, would I be able to fly like an eagle if I jumped out a window, right? But the point is, in the pound for pound, that's what pound for pound is defined as. So yes, obviously we'll look at resume, but we also need to know the skills and abilities of a fighter, which we see in an eye test. So that if we were to match up fighter A with fighter B, like we do in prediction videos for actual fucking fights, we would know, oh, fighter B brings this to the table, fighter A brings this to the table. If fighter A does this really well, fighter B does this very well. When you're going to face an opponent in boxing, it does help that you know what style they fight in and how good they are. And that's what pound for pound is about. Resume tells us the level of opposition they have faced. And the eye test lets us see them in action, so we know what kind of abilities they have, what kind of attributes they have. Okay? You have to put the both together. It's a hypothetical list, yes, but it's a way to class people who's the best boxer across a spectrum of divisions. Yes, it's hypothetical, but there's a lot of things that are hypothetical in this world. Okay? So, Sam Harris, what's up? Just got through with a long debate with my boy about Bud currently being ahead of Spence right now. The boy only watches favorite fighters and everybody else is just there, I guess. Look, Terrence Bud Crawford is pound for pound number one in the world right now. Okay? Canelo just suffered a loss, so he's moved down the pound for pound ranks. It's just what it is. Terrence Bud Crawford will solidify his number one spot if he can beat Errol Spence Jr. Now, let's go through this. Bear with me, and let's take it one step at a time. Bud is a three-divisional world champion. His first title win was against a gentleman named from Scotland, I believe it was. It'll come to me. He won his first title against that guy. Okay? That was at lightweight. He was a lightweight champion. WBO, I believe. I can't remember the fighter's name right now off the top of my head, but that fighter's a two-divisional world champion. Okay? He's a two-divisional world champion. Let me say that again. He's a two-divisional world champion. So when you're talking about pound for pound, understand pound for pound can be demonstrated by a fighter going up in weight and fighting in a new weight class and succeeding in beating fighters at that new weight class. It can be demonstrated. So it can actually be demonstrated, and the more information you have as fighters go up in weight class, especially if they face the very best fighters as they go up in weight, is what determines pound for pound. Okay? So it's kind of hypothetical, but in a real sense, it's kind of real as well. Because if this fighter is going up in weight and proving himself by beating the best at different weight classes, we can rate him much more because we actually have concrete information that pound for pound, this fighter continues to show that he's dominant in multiple weight classes or multiple divisions. We have evidence of that. Okay. Sav Harris says, tell me I'm wrong when I say Spence is at least a little one-dimensional, something that Bud could exploit given the kind of fighter he is. Spence has many dimensions to him. And he has not shown us his full arsenal. He can box, and he can also fight, and he can infight, and he can do a lot of things. So Errol Spence is a Derek James and Errol Spence. The only way you will know is when you find out that Errol Spence spars guys that are light heavyweights and cruiserweights. He spars bigger guys than him. That's why he's able to rough up little guys. He's kind of like Clarissa Shields. Clarissa Shields, she dog walks smaller fighters, right? She dog walks weaker fighters than herself. And the reason is because she spars guys and she spars bigger people than herself and stuff like that. So that's why she gets good work, and she spars a lot of guys. Now, if Spence was 165 pounds on fight night, that's a little different. I'd say he'd walk through Bud and grind him down. I don't think Spence can walk through Bud, though. Bud bench presses 450 pounds. Okay? He ain't walking through Bud. Bud is not a small guy anymore. Bud, when he first came to the division, he was a bit small, but now he's not. He's a full-fledged welterweight right now. He can't go back down, and fight a super lightweight or lightweight. He's never going to do that ever again. He has outgrown those divisions. He is a full-fledged welterweight. I'm not talking like Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather is a small welterweight. Floyd Mayweather stayed around. Floyd Mayweather come in the ring anywhere between 146 and 150, 51. Floyd Mayweather. That's Floyd Mayweather. Errol Spence and Bud, those dudes. If they walk around, Bud walk around at about 180 something like Canelo. Errol Spence walk around 180 something like Canelo. So Errol Spence and Bud, they could fight tomorrow at super middleweight. They could pick up not a top level super middleweight fight, but they could win a super middleweight fight tomorrow. They're both big guys. Erislandy Lara is a big guy too. He's like 178, 179. Walk around. Rehydrate to that. Sorry, fight night. So they're big guys. Just because they fight in a certain weight class don't mean they're not big guys, you know? Yeah, I never seen Spence box. What I'd call classic boxing per se. Oh yeah, he can box. He can box. He can box very well. That's not the thing with Spence actually. My thing with Spence is Spence is sharp, precise, well rehearsed. You know, a lot of repetition. Bud can create stuff. He can create punches out of thin air. He's very plastic. Bud is a very plastic fighter. I haven't seen a fighter like that in, I would say, okay, first of all, Bud is something like Sugar Ray Leonard in the sense that he figures you out as the fight goes along. And even if he has no previous experience dealing with that style, he's going to figure it out, right? Sugar Ray Leonard was the same kind of thing. But he's also kind of like Sugar Ray Robinson in the sense that he does some really weird shit, man. Like his footwork and his upper body work, he literally, those things can work independent of each other. Like his feet can be doing one thing and his hands are doing something else. And like his upper body's moving at a totally different rhythm to his lower body. So it's like he's very plastic. He's really weird. And he can box like a normal boxer. He can box, you know, very precise and accurate like how Spence does it. So he's really weird. And he's ambidextrous. He can fight with either hand, you know, as the lead. And He's just very strange, like in that respect. Like he does this little shuffle dance kind of thing, and he does some weird stuff. And that's why I said Bud he's unique. He's very unique. And then the other thing about it is, of course, he's a very smart boxer. And then if he wants to, he can just dog walk your ass, and he doesn't care if he gets hit, and or he can box you and not get touched at all. And then he can clinch. He's got a really great clinch game. So Bud is a very, very, very difficult fighter to face. But Spence is an excellent fighter. So I mean, the thing with Spence, what makes Spence special is his pivot work. This boy can pivot. He can pivot. He can do all kinds of pivots. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how Bud and Spence pans out when the fight happens. Because they're very good. Like Spence is very good at certain things. It's just what it is. How does Crawford remind you, if most stylistically? I've never seen a style like Crawford's. Because he's cerebral, he's smart, and yet at the same time, his coordination is weird, his timing is weird. He finds your timing, he finds your rhythm, and then he can exploit the situation. The way how he beat Sean Porter, no one has ever done that. No one who has ever faced Sean Porter has ever done that to him. Okay? And Kenny Porter pulled Sean from the fight because Bud dropped him twice. One in the same round, one after the other. Bud changed gears and just dropped him twice. Nobody's ever done that to Sean Porter. Nobody. Not Errol, nobody. So, Bud's very special. And you just, again, like I said, the eye test is emphatically showing us that Bud is on a totally different level to everybody else. Shout out to Leroy Kong. Hello to you. Sorry I'm late. On my way home from work. Okay, man. I got to go and do some things too. But I just want to talk about these narratives that they doing with Canelo that I personally don't like. I don't appreciate. I don't appreciate fans making excuses for a fighter who needs to make adjustments to his game, who needs to work on his game. The same things Floyd Mayweather did to Canelo are the same things Dimitri Bivol did. And then they're trying to say Dimitri Bivol, he's basic. No. Dimitri Bivol made the fight look basic. He may look like he's doing simple things, but he's not doing simple things. They say the masters make it look easy. And Bivol made that fight look easy. Alright? Bivol's a master. Don't forget to smash the like button. If you're going to contribute here, smash the like button. Help me out a little bit. Yeah, so, Bivol is one of those guys that I've been watching for a long time. And I know, Mayweather obviously saw what he saw with Bivol. And that's why he picked him to beat Canelo. But I didn't even have to think twice. Like when I heard Canelo seal the deal to fight Bivol, I was like, okay, so here we go. I knew Bivol was gonna beat him. It had to do with the footwork. It had to do with Bivol's feet and what he does with his feet, particularly. And your foundation's everything. So I knew from the jump this was a fight that Canelo was going to be going uphill on. And it was a fight that he very well could have lost. And I was more confident that he would lose the fight as the fight came closer when I realized that Bivol was healthy. He didn't have any weight constraints, none of that. When I looked at him in the weigh-in, and then his mindset was just locked in. He was locked in, and he was just confident in his skills and everything. He didn't have to make no big show. And I was surprised that Canelo took the fight. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought, wow, this guy really wants to face the best. So I was very impressed with that. I just thought that was just too much for him to handle because of his feet. It's his footwork. Like I said before, that Canelo's footwork. And he never worked on it. He never worked. He may have worked on it, but he didn't make it a priority. And so, he couldn't set the traps that he really wanted to set. He just kind of leaned on the ropes instead of moving his feet. Like he said, he had some fatigue later on in the fight. He himself said that post-fight. But he said he felt fresh and good. Did Bivol mark him up and hurt him real bad? No, didn't. Because Bivol wasn't really putting heat on his shots. In the 12th round, he put some heat on his shots. But for the most part, Bivol wasn't trying to, knock him out, right? He wasn't trying to knock out Canelo, which is smart because to beat a fighter like a Canelo or even beat a fighter like Floyd, you can't put everything on your shot. You're not going in for the KO. If the KO presents itself, sure, you're going there to fight them smart, and that's what Bivol did. And by being so fluent, he hurt Canelo a couple of times, but he wasn't going in there to try to stop Canelo. And a lot of people were like, if Bivol had that mindset to stop Canelo, he would have stopped him. Yeah, possibly. But I doubt it because he couldn't really get two shots on Canelo. Canelo's very slippery, and Bivol even said that. He said, he's underrated how much his upper body movement is. He's really good with that. He's good with the upper body movement, but he's not moving his feet when he does that. Very rarely is his feet moving. And he could use his feet also as his defense, and pivot out the way. And I'm telling you, if Canelo had active feet and he could really generate the kind of movement that he needed to do out of his feet, he would be unbelievable. Right? He would be unbelievable. He would, but he don't have that. So that's what he has to work on, so that he's definitely an unstoppable fighter. And this is the problem with Canelo. That is the elephant in the room. That's it. And I mean, if he doesn't change that, he's not going to win the fight. He's never going to beat Bivol. It's styles make fights, and Bivol's style is kryptonite for Canelo, and it's just what it is. He'll beat him at 168. He'll beat him at 175. He'll beat him with Canelo being the bigger guy. It doesn't really matter. Because it's all about movement. It's all about movement, So all these excuses, I heard another one is Canelo's challenging himself. Listen, man. He can't challenge himself more than Mayweather challenged himself. But just because Mayweather made the fights look so easy, like how Bivol made the fights look so easy, people feel you need to go up in weight and keep on going up in weight. The problem with that is, what happens when you can't even make the weight? When you can't even make the weight, what am I supposed to do? Fill my pockets with coins or wear a jacket and a coat and make the weight? Right? Mayweather went to 154. He's never made 154 ever in his life. Never. He is a welterweight at most. Okay? And that's his peak weight. Welterweight is his peak weight. He went beyond that. Canelo still can make 175. He made it easy. Okay? So that's not his peak weight. His peak weight would be cruiserweight. I don't think he can make the cruiserweight limit, which is 190 something pounds. He can't make that. Right? That would be his peak weight. He got to go do that to even be on the same level playing field as a Mayweather. Okay? So when you say Mayweather didn't challenge himself like the former pound for pound, or is it Gennady Golovkin you're talking about? Because Gennady Golovkin was actually the former pound for pound. There was Andre Ward. There was Robert Chocolito Gonzalez. Is this the former pound for pound you're talking about, King? Because you got to let us know. Right? My point being, Chocolatito, he's a 4-divisional champion, if I'm not mistaken. Right? He pushed himself as well. He tested himself. If you're a multi-divisional champion, you obviously are testing yourself because the competition that you had, you mastered that. So you move on to the next level. So I never understood what they're talking about. Canelo's testing himself. Well, what about his contemporaries? What about Charlo? Well, Charlo tested himself too. Okay? But you can't just go jumping up trying to fight guys like Bivol and those guys who are unknowns. The world doesn't know them. How are you going to make money? You have to make money, right? Canelo's a given. He's making money guaranteed. We talking about he making $40 million guaranteed. Of course he can do that. Of course he can do that. It's not a loss for him. But when you're making only $2 million, $3 million, maybe $8 million, maybe $10 million, you're not going looking for obscure people who nobody knows to fight. You got to get the big fights. Canelo already had the big fights early in his career. And the reason that happened is because of Golden Boy. They hooked him up with Floyd, and that took him to the next level. Okay? Boxing don't work like how these people try to make these excuses make it sound. They're doing like if boxing's like that. You got to become something. You got to make a name. You think Charlo don't want to face a name? You think it's just Canelo? They want names. They want names. You want to face a name. You want big fights. Every boxer wants a big fight. Every boxer wants a big fight. Right? So you say, well, why isn't Charlo facing Benavidez? Well, first of all, Benavidez is in the weight class above him. Yes, he did open his mouth, chirp, and talk about how he wants to face. But you have to look at, does it make sense? Does it make money? All right? This is how the modern age of boxing is. It's always been that way, really. But does it make sense? If it makes sense for a Charlo versus Benavidez fight, then absolutely. But if the purse is going to be about the same as Charlo staying at 160, then what's the sense doing that? You see what I'm saying? But nonetheless, yeah, Charlo ducked Benavidez because he mentioned his name and then he didn't face him. So he ducked him. But not to say that I'm against that. I love to see young talent face each other as well and all of that. But you can't expect a guy whose livelihood, okay, this is what he does for his living, and takes care of his family with this living. You can't expect a guy who he wants to face guys at least 2 times a year. You can't expect a guy to be like Canelo, because Canelo, he done already made generational wealth money. So he can do whatever the hell he wants to do. He can afford to lose fights too. Because in this day and age, there are a lot of undefeated fighters. Right? In this day and age, that mythical pound for pound list means something. Because guess what? The more you are known, is the more people come see you. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that fighters shouldn't try and get fights, but of course you're going to strive to face the best. Right? That's why Andre, he's talking about trying to get Benavidez. And he's not with DAZN anymore. He's an independent contractor. And I'm sure he's going after that Benavidez fight if he can. Okay? And he will be a 3-divisional champion if he can beat no, he'll be doing an eliminator. He'll do an eliminator. But he get himself in position to face Canelo. Maybe he's trying to get that Benavidez fight right now. Okay? But you gotta angle yourself to try and get as big a fight as you can. That's fair enough. It's your career. We are fans. We're just sitting on the sideline. We're fans. But when you're doing this as a livelihood, it's a totally different story, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? And there's a lot of undefeated fighters out here now. The landscape is different to back in the day, in the throwback days where guys were just fighting anybody. Didn't care. They were just fighting. Okay? The boxing world has become stratified a lot more than back then. Okay? It's just what it is. Alright? And there are huge paydays for guys. Getting paid, $900,000 for the year or $1 million for the year is great. And if you're doing it consistently, that's very great. That's life-changing money. But then generational wealth we're talking about, where your family and their team and everybody can be satisfied, that's on the cards too. So why wouldn't they go after that? Remember, boxing don't got no union. Boxing ain't got no insurance. They ain't got none of that for boxers. There's nothing laid away for you later on in your career. So Al Heyman's so kind to the boxers. He's been kind to them. All the old vets like, Louis Collazo and all these guys. They're getting some of the biggest paydays of their career because of all the hard work they put in their career, and it stayed at a high level. So they're getting rewarded. All right? You got to understand this is how the sport works. So when they say Canelo's taking risk and stuff, of course the motherfucker could take risk. He making 30 million, 40 million a fight. He can take risk. Of course he can. Okay? He getting paid the money to take the risk. Risk versus reward. So of course he'll take it. Do you think there's a fighter on this planet who's afraid to face another fighter? No. That's what they do. They fight. But at that level, you want it to be something where it's worth your while to put in all the effort and training and pay, and pay your trainer, pay your manager, pay this guy, pay that guy, pay your sparring partners, pay all it, because you have a whole team you got to pay to get the best out of it. Your nutritionist, your cook, your all. You got to pay all them people, man. It's not just one fighter going in the ring just to fight. It's a whole set of people who their vocation and their jobs depend on this fighter going into a fight. And if you win the fight, guess what? Your purse goes up, your value goes up, your stock goes up. Depending on how good your win is, it can go up high. Depending on how bad your win is, it could be it may shift a little bit or it may stay level. You might lose the fight too, but really you won the fight, and your stock will go up. It depends on how exciting the fight is. Your stock will go up, and all of these other variables. But at the end of the day, don't fucking tell me that Canelo's taking risks like nobody else in the business. That's bullshit. Y'all bullshitting us. As fans, you want us to carry a narrative. He getting paid for that risk, motherfucker. He's getting paid for that risk. So stop it. Stop the bullshit. You think if Canelo was getting paid $2,000, $1,000, I'm sorry, he was getting paid $1 million or $500,000, he'd be doing this shit? Hell no. Hell no. Okay. So let's get the realism. Let's get this for real, okay? And you have to look out for yourself. You got to dot the T's, dot the I's. You got a lawyer that you got to have so the lawyer can look through your work, screen it, know if it's good for you or beneficial for you. You know, there's a lot of things go on in boxing today that the throwback fighters didn't have none of that to deal with. Okay? Because there's a lot more money in boxing. And the elite fighters, not the ordinary level fighters, those poor guys, they get like 50,000, maybe they get some people get $2,000, $3,000 a fight, okay? But the elite boxers, they're making big money in boxing. Big money. We're talking 500,000 and up, okay? And it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not really a lot of money, okay? Because you got to pay out to a lot of people. It's like you have a company almost. You're running a big business, okay? And you have to pay all these people that, you know, also live by your business. So there's a lot going on with the elite boxer, and you have to understand business. You have to have business sense, okay? So when you hear Jamal Charlo say it was just business, you know, and Jamal, he's disappointed that Bivol beat Canelo because he was hoping that Canelo would beat Bivol. You know, but it's not. Bivol been doing this thing for a long time. It's not as easy as it looks. Bivol would double, triple the jab. Sometimes he would throw the jab as a probe. Sometimes he would throw the jab as a blinder. Sometimes he throw the jab off an angle as he's pivoting out the way. Sometimes he throw the jab to pierce the guard. You know, he used the jab for several different things. Bivol be keeping the jab in Canelo's face to blind him and to keep him from advancing, to make him hesitant to advance. This is stuff that Floyd was doing. All right? So it's not, I mean, Canelo has beaten guys much bigger than him. Callum Smith, right? He's beaten Sergey Kovalev. And Sergey Kovalev had some success against him. Boxed brilliantly. Okay? He faced, these are guys that are bigger than him. Physically, dimensionally, and probably in the ring when they come into the ring, they're like 180-something pounds, right? And just to make my point clear, Callum Smith's right now fighting at light heavyweight. Because he basically was a light heavyweight fighting at super middleweight. He could make the super middleweight limit, but then after that, he blow up to about 180-something pounds. Okay? And he probably hit like that. The problem with Callum Smith is he had no inside game whatsoever. Bivol does have inside game. And he counters you on the inside. All right? In his own way. So, To say that Bevo, and Bevo's like what, 180 something pounds, 183 pounds. He's not a big light heavyweight. Big light heavyweights come in 190, 190 plus. Eddie Hearn was saying that Bevo will come in 190 something plus. He didn't come in that. Okay, so he's not a big light heavyweight. So when people say, well, it's light heavyweight, Canelo, those light heavyweights can take much harder punches. Yes, they can. That's true. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. And Bevo fought some heavy light heavyweight punchers. Joe Smith Jr. is a heavy light heavyweight puncher. João Pascal was a heavy light heavyweight puncher. Sullivan Barrera is a heavy. These guys are physically bigger than Bevo, right? But he didn't get touched that much in those fights. And against Canelo, again, he didn't get touched that much either. So that's just the way how he fights. Bevo ain't fighting in the pocket all the time with Canelo. Most of the time, he's fighting from the outside. So it don't really matter. You see what I'm saying? They're talking about, Bevo is a guy that could take Canelo's punches. Well, he took everybody else's punches at light heavyweight, so why Canelo would be an exception? Bevo even said Canelo has good power. And he showed how his arm got damaged from Canelo's shots. He's got good power. And Joel Diaz realized that Canelo's trying to disable Bevo's jabs, because that's what Canelo do. He does disable the jab. If he can't counter over your jab, or he can't counter under your jab, he gonna attack your jabbing arm. And we saw that against Callum Smith, right? The only reason Bevo's arm didn't swell up like Callum Smith's arm is because Joel Diaz had to do diligence to put ice on it. He was icing his shoulder all the time and asking him how his shoulder was going. Because Bevo does use the eye guard. He doesn't roll punches. He doesn't ride punches like Caleb Plant does. All right, so he took it on the arm, and Bevo just flexed his arm to sort of absorb the shock. And he, when you ball up like this, obviously you can catch punches on either side. So, he had a very good guard. So that's the reason why Bevo was able to take those punches. It's not that Canelo wasn't having an effect on Bevo. It's not that Canelo wasn't throwing the kind of power that he has. He has good power. That's not the problem. The problem was that Bevo was prepared for that because he had sparring partners that emulated what Canelo does. So he was prepared for whatever Canelo would bring because he had people prepare him. It's like this is where I don't believe the bullshit that people give. And I'm telling you, there's bullshit out there. When people say, oh, this guy was too big for him, and so I know that if you're training for a guy who's big and powerful, you're going to get sparring partners. You're going to get work. That at least you're going to train for power, and you're going to train for speed if the guy's fast and powerful. So Bevo got sparring partners that would be able to help him deal with the speed and the power, and he built up the resistance to it. It's all about preparation. So when they make the excuse, oh, light heavyweight was too big for Canelo. Yeah, if light heavyweight's too big for Canelo, why is he sparring Frank Sanchez, who's a fucking heavyweight? Why was he sparring Gavordik, who's a fucking light heavyweight? Make that make sense to me. You think if Gavordik was having the better of him, or if Frank Sanchez was having the better of him, you think he would be going into this fight? You think he'd be ready for this? He was ready for this fight. He can fight light heavyweights. So that's bullshit. So when they say light heavyweights, he's not having the impact on light heavyweights that he usually does. Well, that's not completely true because he knocked Sergey Kovalev the spark out, and that's a light heavyweight. Where was his punch resistance? Right? It's not true. It's just that they expected their game plan to wear down Bevo and get him out of there. Didn't work like it worked for other light heavyweights. Okay? It didn't work because Bevo, he moves too much for Canelo. He can't get him in front of him like how he really wants to line him up because of his feet. He can't keep that foot activity like how Bevo could. So Bevo's cutting all kinds of angles, popping them with the jab, all kinds of places, changing levels, feinting up top, going to the body with the jab. Then he starts throwing lead right hands to the body and stuff like that. He's picking him apart and spinning him. He's picking him apart and spinning him And he's relaxed. He's just doing what he do. He's having fun. He could go 20 rounds doing that, right? And Canelo can't keep up. That's what was happening. He was a step ahead of Canelo all the way through the fight. That was all that was happening. He got beat. If you talking about size, why didn't Bivol put his weight down on him like Tyson Fury do? Headlock him. You want to talk about size being a factor? That's the major thing. Or why didn't Bivol knock him out with a punch? Well, how about Canelo's punch resistance? No, that wasn't a problem because Canelo can roll, ride, and all that kind of shit. Catch punches, all kinds of things he can do. Bivol couldn't catch him with two punches, one after the other. He wasn't catching him with 1-2s. He was catching him with one punch. Like he might catch him on the 1-2-1, right? He catch him with the one. He catch him with the jab afterwards, right? Or he catch him with a hook afterwards. Or he catch him with a he feint the jab and come around with the hook, right? My point being, this was a tactical fight. And the master boxer won. That's all that happened. You know, what happens if Bivol takes the agreement and he says, I'm going to go down to 168 and get him belts, right? He goes down, he makes 168 weight on the official weigh, and he blows back up to about 181, maybe 180, maybe 179, right, on fight night. And blows out Canelo at 168. What is the excuse you all going to have now? Was Canelo, so what, Bivol was too big for Canelo? Was he still too big for Canelo? Y'all babysitting Canelo. Canelo don't even have a scratch on his damn face. He don't even have a scratch on his face at the end of the Bivol fight. In the 11th round, he picks up Bivol and has Bivol on his shoulder. He's strong as an ox, man. That's an excuse. That's an excuse. That's an excuse. And we need to, as fans, we mustn't buy into that bullshit. We mustn't buy into those bullshit. You know? And here's another one that they had. Canelo taking risks. That nobody else is taking risk in boxing. That's not true. There are guys who are 4 divisional champions, like Naoya Inoue, all right, Mikey Garcia. There's lots of guys in boxing, and they lost their fights. So you can't come with that, right? Another excuse that they're using is, and they're saying Bud is not pound for pound number 1 right now. They're saying Bud is not pound for pound. Canelo's still pound for pound number 1. How could Canelo be pound for pound number 1 and he just lost a fight? You can't, that don't make no sense. That's like Lomachenko being pound for pound number 1 after he lost to Teofimo Lopez. That's not happening. You're going to topple off the chart. Why? There are 2 reasons. 1, you were out-strategized and out-boxed. This wasn't a close fight. This wasn't a split decision. This wasn't, as much as the judges try to make it sound like it was a close fight, it wasn't a close fight at all. Right? Bivol dominated this dude. He controlled him. He dictated the pace. He decided when something was going to happen and how it was going to happen. Okay? He was outboxed. This had nothing to do with size. This has to do with skills, as Bivol was telling you. This has to do with skills. He was outboxed completely. Mayweather style. I'm laughing because I know some of you guys are like, Mayweather, you gotta bring up Mayweather. Mayweather style. That's right. He's outboxed. So, my point being, it is nothing like, oh, he's gonna be pound for pound. You can't be pound for pound number 1 and you got outboxed like that. You got whitewashed. We got to go picking and choosing and saying, oh, let's get this round to Canelo. Let's get this round to Canelo. Can I get this round to Canelo? You got to, he begging for rounds. He's like, oh, I need a round. He got outboxed completely. All right? That's not somebody, you go back. This is different to, if you got knocked out, well, you could say, oh, well, he was lucky or something. It was a lucky punch or something, like Pacquiao versus Marquez. But you can't say, this dude just went 12 rounds and you got outboxed. You got to go back to the drawing board and figure out why you got outboxed. Because you got outboxed. This is different. There's no coming back from that. Basically, it's saying in a rematch, if you got a puncher's chance, you might win. That's the worst thing in the world in boxing because it messes up your ego, it messes up your mind. You get all boxed. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to a boxer. That's why they make excuses afterwards. And Canelo, he should have stopped that. The better man won tonight. And I definitely wanted a rematch, but the better man won tonight. And that was it. Okay? You know who the assassins, the true assassins in boxing are? It's the guys that can outbox everybody. You want to know what boxers are really afraid of? Yeah, you might get knocked out. That's kind of embarrassing. But you know what's really embarrassing? Getting outboxed, outplayed for 12 rounds, 15 rounds, 10 rounds. That's humiliating. This is why Pacquiao and the Pac-Tards can't recoup from that loss to Mayweather. Because he got outboxed. Duran never survived Sugar Ray Leonard's outboxing him. It's the most humiliating thing ever. Getting outboxed. He's not knocking you out. It's the word. It's humiliating. Woo. Oh yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah, he got a box. Now, like I said before, his foot speed, his consistency of his feet, so he can bob and weave, slip and slide to the inside, cut off the ring much more efficiently. That would help him, but it takes time for that to develop. This is why, even if he gets an immediate rematch, I'm not going to pick him to win because I know what his Achilles heel is. And he's a clever boxer and everything, but you didn't work on a certain aspect of your game. You see? And that becomes critical at certain points. There are very few boxers, I think, in boxing right now that can just beat Canelo straight up and down. You have to have certain attributes, right? It's not just throwing the jab, as Charlo thinks it is. If you throw the jab and you stand in front of Canelo, he's going to counter your jab. No, you have to throw it and pivot. You have to have points of entry, points of exit. You have to blind him, and then you have to throw it. It's not about throwing hard. Bivol didn't throw a lot of hard jabs. It's about why you're throwing it, for what reason. You have to become somebody who he cannot anticipate what you're going to do. And Bivol was a guy who not only frequently threw the jab, but he threw it at different speeds, different rates, different angles. And because of that, Canelo couldn't really predict exactly where he was, and he couldn't get really counter him. See? But Canelo has good head movement, all of that stuff. He's fantastic. He's a fantastic fighter, but you know, there's certain things, man. There's certain things and certain masters of different crafts. When you meet up with a master, you know, everybody's giving Triple G a lot of praise for his jabs and all of that. And Triple G does have a good jab. Cotto has a good jab. Very good jab. You know, even Danny Jacobs had a decent jab, right? But those guys are somewhat predictable, and Canelo, and they're slow. Well, not Danny Jacobs, but you know, Aristotle Lara, not so much a jab because he was a southpaw, so he would more throw the lead right hand and then come up with a right hook, lead left hand and then lead right hand, maybe a straight left or a lead left hand, and then the right hook. You know, it might hook you, or you know, or come back with the left or whatever. But I'm saying all of this not to offend Canelo at all. I'm just hammering home what the real issue was, and that and everybody kind of knows this. They don't know exactly how to say it. People say Canelo has slow feet. He doesn't have slow feet, by the way. But they say he has slow feet because he comes in inching in and plodding in, and he's flat-footed at the time. But he doesn't have slow feet. Okay. The problem with Canelo has always been cardio, stamina, being able to consistently keep that pace and momentum and activity for any length of time. That's his problem. That's why he tries to conserve energy in fights. Um, and once he works on that and his feet, he has to get his feet more active. He has to move around the ring. You have to be able to move around the ring. You can't, if you stay stationary, you're not going to do much of anything, right? You have to move. You always have to be moving around the ring. That's how you set traps for people, right? And if you just think about any successful fighter, whether it's Sugar Ray Leonard, whether it was Aaron Pryor, Pacquiao, Mayweather, Roy Jones Jr., they're not standing in front of their opponent or leaning up on the ropes against their opponent. They're moving either backwards or forwards, or they're circling their opponent, but their feet are constantly active. And that is something Bivol does very well as well. And so that's what Canelo lacks. And it's believe you me, it's a lot to take in and a lot to do, but he can do it. But he needs to get help. I keep on emphasizing this over and over again. If you guys listen to what I'm saying, it makes sense. It makes sense. That is his Achilles heel, right? Even when he's dominating opponents. I remember when he was facing Alfredo Angulo. You know, he gassed out somewhere around, I think it was round 4 or 5, and Angulo was coming at him, and he was backing up and stuff. Even against James Kirkland, he even did that. He just leaned up on the ropes using the roving guard and let James Kirkland wail at him, you know, because he's tired, so he's resting. Even the first Gennady Golovkin fight, you see him move towards the ropes. After the 6th round, he's moving more towards the ropes, and he's just staying off the ropes, picking off shots. Why? His feet are tired. Yeah? That makes sense? So this is the thing with Canelo. And you can exploit that. Yeah? But if only those feet, he would be a phenom. It's his feet that keep him back. He would be a phenom. Because he's a hell of a fighter. But with respect to the excuses, I don't want to hear them. He lost. And he lost to possibly the greatest light heavyweight in the division right now. Because I don't see anybody beating Bivol. I don't even see Bidabiev beating Bivol. I don't see it. You know. And that's saying a lot. He already beat Joe Smith Jr. So the guy that Bidabiev is about to face, he already beat that dude. Okay? So that's to tell you how good he is. And Joe Habib was saying he's going for Joe Smith over Artur Bidabiev. I'm not going for Joe Smith over Artur Bidabiev. I believe Artur Bidabiev will beat Joe Smith, and comprehensively. But he's going for Joe Smith over Bidabiev. So just imagine if Joe Smith beats Bidabiev, he's now the three sanctioning body or unified, 3-title unified champion. Then he's got to go rematch Bivol, who's definitely going to beat him. You know, that's what I'm trying to show you. Bivol is special. He's different. You know. And it just got beat by the better guy. It's nothing to do with people trying to make it sound like it's size or all this. Canelo prepared for size. He was sparring guys big. You know, heavyweights and cruiserweights and even light heavyweights. He was sparring guys to prepare himself for Bivol. So you can't talk about size. And Bivol wasn't fighting using his weight or his size. So I just wanted to say that. Now, as to Terrence Crawford being pound for pound #1, why is that so? Let's get to that. Why is Terrence Crawford pound for pound #1? Well, for several different reasons. One, he was pound for pound #1 on ESPN's list, even when he was at welterweight a couple of years back. And since Canelo is dethroned and basically Terrence Crawford is next in line, He's pound for pound number one now. Canelo lost, and so he falls off the podium as pound for pound number one. And the manner in which he lost was emphatic. Okay, so you can't say that Canelo is going to beat any fighter in any division. He just lost to a fighter in a division he was in a division he had won a title in. Okay, you just can't do that. It just don't make no sense. And it showed up flaws in Canelo's game, which I just told you guys. That basically is the flaw in his game. All right. Now, and with respect to Terence Crawford, we haven't had that. We've had Terence Crawford. His last win was emphatic. He beat a guy who's extremely durable. It usually gives people a run for their money. And he beat that guy emphatically. So emphatically that his father pulled him from the fight. He was like, nah, no more. I don't want to see my boy get brutalized. And he pulled him. Which probably saved the kid's life. You never know. Shawn Porter will fight to the death. And Shawn Porter is a big welterweight. When we talk about big welterweights, Shawn Porter is a big welterweight. Kell Brook is a true welterweight. He was a big welterweight. That was the fight before. And he knocked out Kell Brook. I said this fight is going to distance. I don't think that Shawn Porter is going to knock out Kell Brook. He knocked him out. He knocked out Shawn Porter. That's emphatic. That is saying, I am supremely levels above that dude. He does not belong in the ring with me. That is what he's saying. That's the statement he made. Okay? So, and I know you say, well, styles make fights. It's true. And Errol Spence has been facing some quality fighters. He's been facing world champions now, fight after fight. Former world champions and actual world champions. So Errol Spence is up there in the pound for pound list as well. He's not as high as Terence Crawford because Terence Crawford beat the number one, not the number one, I think it was the number 2 or something like that, lightweight. Then he went up to 140 pound division and he became undisputed. So nobody could dispute that he was the number 1 guy. And now he's at welterweight and he wants to clean out welterweight as well and become undisputed. Then he says he wants to go up to super welterweight and become undisputed there as well. We'll see if he gets through with that. But Terence is a beast, I think. In terms of mentality, I listened to his mentality and I realized this guy just loves to fight. If he was never in the position he was in, he would be somebody who's involved in some kind of violent something. But he would be in some kind of violent thing. Maybe he'd have been a world-class wrestler, or he may have been involved in crime. Which would have been terrible. But thank God he's not, and so here he is. He's a boxer and he's making millions of dollars. And he's about to make a huge payday against Errol Spence Jr. And we will see who will come out top dog from that fight. I'm not going to predict that fight. I do lean slightly towards Terence now. I used to lean slightly towards Errol. But again, Errol's always been counted out of things, and then he's proven to be, much greater than we anticipated. And the thing about Errol is we have not seen everything that is Errol Spence. We're yet to see that. So I'm looking forward to that fight for so many reasons. It's just too many wild card variances in there for me to predict who really the winner would be. But right now, currently, I'm leaning towards Terence Crawford. But having said that, yes, Terence Crawford is pound for pound the number 1 fighter in the world. Now, I've listened to certain people like Andre Ward, Floyd Mayweather, some certain trainers actually believe that Terence Crawford, even before all of this, while Canelo was pound for pound number 1, they continuously maintain that Terence Crawford is pound for pound the number 1 fighter in the world. And I'm beginning to realize why they said that. So when you look at the eye test, it now, without a doubt, now that we've seen him against some quality opposition, a top 10 welterweight. Shawn Porter was a top 10 welterweight. He was actually at number 5, I believe. He was the number 5 welterweight behind Pacquiao and Ugas, because Ugas was the WBA champion. So it was Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, I think it was I think it was Dennis Ugas because he took Manny Pacquiao's spot. And then I think it was Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter was a top 5 welterweight when Terence Crawford beat him. Okay? So you can't fuck with that. And nobody, has ever done that to Sean Porter. No one. He's lost fights that have always been close. He's lost very close fights, but in this case, he might have made the distance, but Terrence would have beat the snot out of him. And his father was not about to have that happen to him. So, Crawford beat a top 5 welterweight, and that's the first top 5. That's the first high-profile welterweight he ever faced. And Sean wanted to face Terrence Crawford. He wanted that fight. Sean has faced every single top welterweight in the welterweight division currently, except for Jerome Ennis and Virgil Ortiz. I mean, mainly because they're another generation of fighter. But Sean Porter has been incredible. And I want to say that the way how Terrence Crawford got rid of Sean Porter told me, no, this guy's legit. This guy's the real deal. So I'm looking forward to Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence. I think Top Rank and Bob Arum and those kinds of people made it possible for Terrence Crawford to be in the position he is today. So you should thank Bob Arum for that, even though he's suing his ass, which is okay as well. But once he gets that fight with Errol Spence, if he comes out the winner, it's definitely going to launch his career into another level. If Errol comes out the winner, it's definitely going to launch Errol's career, to another level. If they end up drawing, it's going to launch their careers to another level. So it doesn't really matter how it goes. It's going to be a benefit to them, win, lose, or draw. Of course, this is the most anticipated fight of 2022. That's going to be the biggest fight of this year. And we're looking forward to that. But I must say, and I will not make apologies, Terrence Crawford is, pound for pound, the #1 fighter in the world right now. And I've listened to Ness from the Boxing Boys try to tear down his competition and stuff. But like I said before, you can't just look at resume. And he was undisputed champion, of course, at 140. You can't take that away from him. Yeah, it doesn't matter who it was. He ruled 140, okay? And you got other great fighters like Josh Taylor. You got Alexander Usyk, who did some crazy shit. He beat Anthony Joshua. So what I'm saying is, on the pound for pound list, we got some incredible guys, but nobody really touches Terrence Crawford's. Terrence Crawford's resume is actually better than Usyk's resume. Usyk cleaned out the 140 division, no doubt about it. Then he beat Anthony Joshua, which is just insane. Okay, but Terrence was going through 3 divisions. Let's not forget that. So he beat the champion at lightweight. Then he cleaned out super lightweight, and then he jumped up to welterweight, pulled up a title, and then beat a top 5 welterweight in emphatic fashion. Emphatic fashion. All right. So you have to look at that and say, all right, this guy is showing us. And then his skill set is just crazy, right? So the eye test. What can he do? This guy, like Tyson Fury, like Jerome Ennis, and like 2 or 3 other fighters in boxing today that are elite fighters, he can fight in either stance. He's been doing it for a long time. And so, that attribute, and the fact that he's a smart fighter, and the fact that he can make adjustments, and the fact that he's plastic, and then the fact that his movements are independent of each other, and so many other factors, makes him what he is. This is why he's esteemed so highly. Okay? So, I assume when Errol Spence goes up against Terrence Crawford, I assume that most people will pick Crawford to beat Errol Spence. It won't be the other way around. And the reason being that Sean Porter fight must have changed everybody's mind. But even though he may go in as the favorite against Errol Spence, I don't think it's going to be by much, because Errol Spence, like I said before, we don't know everything that Errol Spence can do. And so he's a kind of wild card out there. He's kind of a wild card. And I'm telling you, man, when it comes to pivot work, That man's a master at that. So that in and of itself throws everything off, because if Errol uses the right angles against Terrence, this fight becomes something totally different. And the weird thing about it is, and that's why I'm very intrigued by this fight, and I'm not picking anybody per se. I lean towards Terrence, but that doesn't mean he's going to win. Is what I like about this fight is both guys have attributes, and they are very effective with their attributes. Errol Spence just broke your Dennis Uber's eye orbital, kind of like Canelo styling, right? And then Terrence Crawford comes out there and drops Sean Porter twice. Boom, boom. So Errol dropped Sean Porter once, but in the same round, right after Sean just got dropped, he got dropped again. Again. Like Terrence locked into him, and he was like, "I'm gonna kill you now. You go. I'm going in for the kill. I'm gonna take you out this time." Errol couldn't do that with Sean. Terrence did it. And if you look at the fight with Sean versus Terrence was in control of that fight from round one. Errol was not in control of that fight from round one. It was a battle, and Sean was doing quite well. So it's just dimensionally. Of course, Sean was a world champion when he faced Errol. Let's not forget that. Whereas he was not a world champion, he was just a contender trying to face Terrence Crawford. So there's all those little variables you got to think about, because when you're a world champion, you have a championship mindset. It's a little bit different to when you're a challenger, So there's all those little variables you got to think about, the mental state and all that. But at the end of the day, I think that Crawford did tremendously in stopping Sean Porter. His father was convinced this is going downhill. Don't need it to happen. I'm pulling my son out of this fight, right? And of course, Sean didn't want that to happen, but it is what it is. And so I have Crawford as my number one. If I have to pick anybody, he's the number one pound for pound fighter in the world right now. His resume plus the eye test, the skill set, the attributes that he has tells me he is the number one fighter in the world today. Canelo just fell off the podium, and Terrence just took his place. All right, and Canelo's still top 10 pound for pound fighter in the world. He's not out of the top 10, right? And people say, well, a loss, man, it don't mean nothing in boxing. Yes, it means a lot in boxing. You can go from at the top of the hill, and somebody topple you off the top of the hill, and they don't get to the top of the hill, and it's because all of a sudden a loss can make a big difference. And the kind of loss that Canelo suffered, yeah, it made a big difference. It showed, the eye test shows, oh, no. His attributes and skills couldn't overcome this dude. This dude overcame his attributes and skills. And this dude, if we look at his attributes and his skills, they're kind of comparable to a Terrence Crawford or Errol Spence or Mayweather or even a Pacquiao. Their movement. I mean, Pacquiao don't jab that much, but the skill set that they bring to the table, and therefore I have to rank those guys above him. That's how it goes. So I hope everybody has a good day, a good night. I just thought I'd talk about this because it's just annoying to me when I hear people make excuses for a fighter when they just lost. They lost. It happens. It happens in boxing. You win some, you lose some. Not everybody can win all their fights. Okay? Not everybody can be undefeated throughout their career. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. I give Canelo props for taking on Bivol. I do give him props for that. But that's about it. I'm not going to try and give him and make excuses for him to make it sound like he's still this great fighter. He's unbeatable. But no, I'm not going to go there. Exceptional fighter. Very few fighters will beat him. You have to have certain attributes to beat Canelo. And if you don't have those attributes, you're not going to beat him. So, Art of BDBF, believe it or not, Canelo can beat that dude. Because he doesn't have the attributes that Bivol has. He has a decent jab, but he's too slow. Joe Smith Jr., he can't beat Canelo. I'm telling you right now, the guys that can beat him and cannot beat him. Joe Smith Jr. cannot beat him. He's a champ. Gilberto Ramirez, southpaw, skilled, Uses the jab sometimes. Uses his left hand as well. But I don't see him beating Canelo either. And these are all light heavyweights I'm talking about. Battle Jack, ooh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That could go one of many ways because Battle is not a guy that gets decisions. But that'd be a good fight. Battle Jack is a bigger guy. He is an infighter. He uses his physical size and mass against you. So in that case, Battle Jack will be the bigger guy in that fight. Because he will use his size and mass. No, Canelo's strong and everything, but Battle Jack knows how to infight. So that's a different category. That's a different kettle of fish. Because I realize that Canelo's more of a mid-range fighter. He's not really an infighter. And you could position him, you could turn him, you could do different things with him. So Battle Jack, he would be a problem for Canelo on the inside. On the inside, I'm telling you right now, he's an infighter. Who else? We got Marcus Brown. I got Canelo. Marcus Brown is athletic. Pops that jab, southpaw. I got Canelo. And that might be, you might be saying, what? Yeah, I think Canelo would walk him down. I think the pressure would get to him, and I think he would stop him. I think Canelo would stop Marcus Brown. Joe Smith Jr. stopped Marcus Brown. Joe Smith Jr. is not as quick as Canelo. And I think Canelo has sufficient pop. He may not hit like Joe Smith Jr. He may not hit like Marcus. He may not hit like Jean Pascal. He may not hit like Arthur. He sure as hell ain't hitting like Arthur Beterbiev. He's not hitting like him. But he does hit with decent power. He can put you down with that. He's got good power. Got good power. So but I got him beating those guys. I got him beating. I like most of the light heavyweight division. I got him beating most of those guys. But there's the exceptional guys in the division, and then there's the other guys in the division. You know what I mean? And the exceptional one, which is Bivol, I don't really have him beating him because Bivol exploits his weakness. He exploits it. And Canelo's a good fight. He's a great fighter. Great fighter. He's a great fighter, and I'm not telling him to stay away from Bivol. That's stupid. I'm telling him to work on your fucking game. Work on your feet. That's all I want. I just want to see you do well, Canelo, and you are a freaking phenomenal fighter. But you got to work on your footwork, your activity with your feet. You have to move around that ring. They talk about running. Screw them. Screw them. You got to have that agility, that athleticism, that movement, consistent movement. That is what wins you fights. And with that movement and everything else you have, bring to the table, that takes your game to a whole other level, Canelo. Work on it. Please. I beg you. And he'll be incredible. It'll be hard to stop him because he's got the defense. You got the defense. You just got feet that can't go for 12 rounds. You got to go for 12 rounds with those feet. And maybe you're working on it, but you got to work on that, man. That's all. And get another trainer. I'll tell you why. Because everything has to do with balance and movement. And you need somebody who knows how to move in the ring. And guys could help people with moving around the ring. So that your game will be just a whole other level. Once you can, I can't be just boxing slow and with that slow footwork. I mean, I know you just have to move just enough to be just out of range to counter the guy, but you need to be able to do it where you're moving around the ring quickly and sharply, just like how you so explosive, quickly and sharply, sharp, quick movements, and constantly those feet need to be moving, and that is going to change everything. Everything. Your boxing goes to a whole other level with that. That's what made Floyd Floyd. That's something. Andre Ward, not the greatest, he's not the greatest in any department, but that feet, the foundation, And the way how he constantly moved and his timing, that's what made him Shakur Stevenson. I mean, he's taking it to a whole other level. Like his quickness, his movement, his sharpness is just ridiculous. Right? He's not even breaking a sweat. Okay, Beaver didn't even break a sweat against you either. And that's because tireless hours of doing that. Footwork, moving, movement, footwork, movement. You can't be lazy with it, Canelo. You can't be lazy with that area. You got to build that area. That's the most important area. If you want to win fights, if you want to win all your fights from here on in, and win and beat great world champions and go down in history as the one who beat the most world champions, the one who beat this great and that great and of your era and stuff. That's what you want to you want to build legacy. This is the way to do it. Like I said before, I love Canelo. Canelo to me is, in my opinion, James Toney Floyd Mayweather, a bigger version of them, just Mexican style version of them. I love him. I love watching him fight. But I know he has certain deficiencies and holes in his game he can plug up. But you got to listen to Oscar. You got to get another trainer, coach, mentor, whatever, to teach you that extra stuff, and maybe a nutritionist or something to get that cardio up. And you don't have to use supplements and all that shit. You need to use natural methods, right? The diet and nutrition. And to be fair, he did move a lot more in this fight than he did move in his prior fights. Okay, he did expend a lot of energy, much more energy in this fight than he did in prior fights. But again, nuance. You can't be throwing everything hot, man, Canelo. You can't be throwing everything with power and force all the time. When you meet a master boxer, he'll diffuse that. And then you all tired and you burn out and all that. So you have to learn how to pace yourself and all these things, because you're a terrific fighter. I can't say that enough. He's an incredible fighter. He's already a Hall of Famer. The kinds of things you did, the fighting through the injuries and all that, is just phenomenal. But Bevo, man. It's time for Bevo to shine. I give this man his props. This man did extraordinarily well. And I look forward to seeing him, get his shine. I got a lot of love for Bevo. I always said he's a better fighter than Vasily Lomachenko. He's one of them. He not flashy. He not none of those things. But that motherfucker could fight. You know what I'm saying? He could fight, and he knows the sweet science like. Shh. And it looks simple what he's doing, but he makes it look simple. Y'all say he basic? No, he ain't basic. He ain't basic. The way how he get that spacing, the way how he pivot, that's not basic. That takes timing. That takes a certain set of timing to pivot out of the corner. You know how you know this is hard? I remember Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant could real box and everything. But I remember Caleb Plant being stuck in the corner against Canelo. He couldn't pivot out of the corner like he wanted to. And Bevo showed you with not the shoulder roll defense, but the high guard defense. He showed you how he just rolled out the corner. As Canelo was throwing that right hook, he just rolled on it, and he pivoted out the corner. First he bounced off the ropes, and then he pivoted on it. He made it look so simple. He made it look so easy. That ain't easy to do. He made it look so easy. It ain't easy to do. That man been boxing since he's 5. He ain't flashy, but he a defensive fighter. He catches everything on this. When you try to go around, he's pivoting with you. He's turning with you. So you can't get that hook like you want to get that hook behind the guard. You can't penetrate him because he's facing you all the time. That ain't easy to do. To detect the different angles and to naturally turn with an opponent. It's not easy to do. right? I was shout out to the brother from the Ring magazine. I forgot what his name is. He's a journalist. Y'all know him, and it's just not easy to do. He make it look easy, but it's not easy to do. And the